Here's a bit of fun for a Thursday morning. Let's begin, as all Russian stories do, with whispers and mysteries and the Gogol opaque windows. On July the 16th, just a few days ago, yesterday, Vladimir Putin's 17-car motorcade rumbled through the steel city of Magnitogorsk, captured on surveillance cameras like some ghostly parade and an empty street. One detail stands out, as you can see here. A yellow ambulance in the procession, unobtrusive yet unmistakable. No emergency declared, no explanation given, just there humming along like a silent chaperone to mortality. Ambulance, of course, not a hearse, but who knows what the difference is in Putin's life. Now, in ordinary democracies, the presence of a medical unit near a head of state would hardly raise an eyebrow, but in Russia, where power is theatrical, personal, and paranoid, every glimpse behind the curtain becomes an invitation to speculation, and in Putin's case, the speculation is positively operatic. For months, and indeed since late 2023, a particular narrative has festered in certain telegram channels, especially those linked to dissident Russians and exiles, that Vladimir Putin died in the autumn of 2023, possibly of cancer or some cardiovascular failure, and was quietly replaced by a double. Not a body double for the odd public appearance, which Russia has used before, but a full-scale substitution, an ersatz autocrat, a Potemkin president. The story is frankly absurd in its logistics and staggering in its implications, yet it is staying power. The staying power of this story is instructive. The claim, originating in part from General SVR Telegram channel, a source of dubious provenance but remarkable persistence, insists that the real Putin died on October the 26th, 2023, with precise timings and precise details. The Kremlin allegedly covered this up, deploying body doubles, pre-recorded speeches, and a carefully staged illusion to maintain the image of continuity. Is it true? Well, I'm sorry to say it's almost certainly not, but that misses the point. The fact that so many people want it to be true speaks volumes about the man, the regime, and the political culture that he has built. The idea of Putin having doubles isn't new either. It's appeared for years, sometimes joked about, sometimes whispered seriously by those watching for earlobe asymmetry or walking gait or the color of the eyes. The original Putin had blue eyes. Even Ukrainian intelligence has occasionally hinted that the Putin we see may not always be the Putin that breathes. And why not? He's become a man of myth rather than biography. The concept of Putin is bigger than the person of Putin, a person as performance. In the last years, his public appearances have been heavily stage-managed, often limited to stiffly choreographed events or pre-recorded video calls. When he does emerge in person, observers note changes, a slightly fuller face, a different stride, or even a livelier tone. Certainly the Putin that I see on television is not the Putin that I met. The doppelganger theory has become, in essence, a metaphor. Not that Putin is dead, but that he no longer matters. That the figure we see is functionally indistinct from a waxwork or an actor or a puppet. He's become an institution, a costume worn by the system he created, Putinism, without Putin. There have been genuine questions about the president's health. Kremlin watchers have noted his trembling hands, his bloated face, his increasingly sedentary habits. Last year, a leaked document from a Russian oligarch claimed Putin had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and early Parkinson's. The Kremlin, of course, denies everything. Its denials are so frequent, in fact, they are now a reliable signal that something is wrong. The ambulance, therefore, seen in Magnitogorsk might be perfectly routine, yet it plays into a broader unease. If he's unhealthy, why the ambulance? If he's active, why the need for such extreme sanitation of his appearances? Why does the world's most authoritarian strongman increasingly resemble a man being displayed, not a man in charge? Let's indulge the conspiracy for a moment. Suppose Putin did die in 2023. What would that mean? Would that mean chaos? Possibly, but not necessarily. His regime is highly centralized, but it's also deeply a manifestation of bureaucracy, a cabal of oligarchs, military chiefs, and intelligence figures, the so-called Siloviki. They simply continue to rule, fronted by a lookalike or a successor wearing the same suits, quoting the same slogans. It's autocracy by inertia. The idea that Putin could die and no one would notice, not in Russia, not abroad, is both chilling and credible. Russia has long maintained the control, has managed the transition of power as if it were a state secret. Think of Andropov, Chernenko, even Stalin. Death has always been an occasion for silence first, narrative later. Of course, we can't talk, given the 3 hours that elapsed between the Queen's death and the public announcement. 3 hours or 3 years. The key question is not whether Putin is alive or dead, like Schrödinger's cat, but rather what it says about the question that needs to be asked. The sight of an ambulance in a presidential convoy ought to mean much, or ought not to mean anything at all. But in a system addicted to secrecy, it becomes freighted with meaning. Russia's real problem is not that Putin might be dead, but that the machinery of state is so hollowed out, so unaccountable, that no one outside the Kremlin walls can say for certain, is he dead, is he alive? Schrödinger's cat. Where you don't know. You don't know until you open the box. You don't know until you get into the Kremlin whether Putin is alive or dead. So, even to talk about this, you'd say, oh, is he spreading some sort of conspiracy theory? No, I'm asking the logical questions when you see an ambulance bobbling along after Putin's parade. Truth itself has become a casualty, and that's more dangerous than anyone's health. So is Putin alive? Most likely in some form, though I think he abandoned humanity long ago. Is he in good health? Unclear, and I think probably unlikely. Does he still rule? And that's the question, isn't it? Does he still rule? We are witnessing the necropolitics of an empire in decline where death is either denied or deployed as a strategy, the El Cid of power, where simply to see the dead man on a horse is a terrifying image that someone can survive death. The dead man on a horse, that is Putin. The man who abandoned humanity, who surrendered to evil to such an extent that he cannot see what good is anymore. That's what evil is. Evil is not something you can recover from. You can't make a decision to get away from evil like you make a decision to go on a diet. You can't do it. Once you've surrendered to evil, that's it. The only way to get out of evil is exorcism, to get the help of some professionals. Putin is beyond his own salvation and beyond his own survival. If he wants help from others, I'm sure there are plenty of people who might help. But where death is denied or deployed as strategy, where the sovereign may already be entombed in myth, or is entombed in myth, of course he is, and where a 17-car motorcade with an ambulance is not simply transport, but a state of mind. And that in itself is a kind of obituary. And Putin doesn't look good when people write his obituary. Putin doesn't look good at all. Putin the man was finished in about 2014 when he invaded Crimea. The rest is simply a footnote in terms of humanity, a footnote.